Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira. Here's a roundup of all the international news over the next half an hour. We'll bring you up to date with the latest from around the world. President Donald Trump puts stamp on U.S. immigration and security policy, moves ahead with bold promise of building a wall on the border with Mexico. Mexican president cancels visit to Washington after Trump's order. President Trump withdraws U.S. from Trans-Pacific Partnership deal. Asian TPP nations pledge to salvage trade accord. Australia and New Zealand to pursue TPP 12-1. India and UAE ink agreements in various fields, including one on allowing the Gulf nation to fill the country's strategic oil storage facility in South India. Both nations also decide to elevate the bilateral relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership. And President Adama Barrow arrives in Gambia from Senegal. Crowds celebrate homecoming of their new president. Gambians hopeful of democratic reforms and newfound freedoms to the nation. Less than a week into his presidency, Donald Trump has moved aggressively to put his stamp on a range of policies. On Wednesday, the President of the United States ordered construction of a U.S.-Mexican border wall and punishment for cities shielding illegal immigrants. The move was condemned by Mexicans, with President Enrique Pena Nieto saying there is no way Mexico will pay for the wall.
President Donald Trump has issued an executive order for an impossible physical barrier to be built along the U.S. border with Mexico. He also signed an action to strip funds from U.S. cities that are sanctuaries for undocumented immigrants. Trump said in a TV interview that Mexico would absolutely 100% reimburse the U.S. for his wall.
We're in the middle of a crisis on our southern border. The unprecedented surge of illegal migrants from Central America is harming both Mexico and the United States, and I believe the steps we will take, starting right now, will improve the safety in both of our countries. Going to be very, very good for Mexico. The Secretary of Homeland Security, working with myself and my staff, will begin immediate construction of a border wall.
The cost and nature of the wall have not been made clear. Many Democrats have opposed the plan and could try to thwart any legislation to pay for the construction in the U.S. Congress, although Republicans control both the Senate and the House of Representatives. Meanwhile, Mexican President Enrique Pena Nieto said he regrets and disapproves the push by Trump to build a wall along the border.
Lamento y repruebo.
I regret and disapprove of the decision by the United States to continue with the construction of the wall. Mexico does not believe in walls. Mexico will not pay for any wall.
México no cree en los muros.
Travelers crossing the U.S. border with Mexico in Southern California were also unimpressed with the U.S. president's order.
Trump says that he's building it to stop bad people crossing, that Mexicans carry drugs. You can't label us as one person because there are millions of Mexicans who are hardworking, honest, and who have travel documents to come to the United States.
I think the wall is not going to have much use because we already have a wall. Human beings can build walls even in their mind, but they don't achieve anything because it makes people more creative. So it's useless. It'll bring no benefit.
Trump made cracking down on illegal immigration a key element of his presidential campaign, with supporters often chanting "Build the wall" during his rallies. Trump has long said that he will make Mexico pay for the wall, but Mexican officials have forcefully resisted this idea. Trump's actions could fundamentally change the American stance on immigration, as well as further testing relations with Mexico. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, Australia and New Zealand say that they are hopeful of pressing ahead with the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal despite America's formal withdrawal. The US-led 12-nation agreement was set to cover 40% of the world's economic output. Pulling out of the TPP was one of Trump's first executive orders and fulfills a long-held campaign promise. Australia has already devised a name for a possible new agreement, TPP 12-1. Asian Trans-Pacific Partnership nations announced on Tuesday they were looking for ways to save the multi-country trade pact in the wake of US President Donald Trump's decision to pull his country out of it. Fulfilling a campaign pledge, Trump signed an executive order in the Oval Office on Monday, pulling the United States out of the 2015 TPP agreement and distancing the United States from its Asian allies.
All right, we're going to sign 3 memorandums right now. The first one is withdrawal from the United States from the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Everyone knows what that means, right? We've been talking about this for a long time. Thank you. Okay. Great thing for the American worker, what we just did.
Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull said he is looking to salvage the Trans-Pacific Partnership by encouraging other nations into the agreement. Trump's decision opens the door for the remaining members of the pact who are more reliant on trade to bring other nations, in particular China, into the negotiations.
We want to have more opportunities with more markets. We already have a China-Australia free trade agreement. Certainly there is the potential for China to join the TPP.
Turnbull said he had discussions with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, New Zealand Prime Minister Bill English and Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong about the possibility of proceeding with the TPP without the United States.
It is possible that US policy could change over time on this, as it has done on other trade deals. There is also the opportunity for the TPP to proceed without the United States, and I've had active discussions with other leaders as recently as last night with Prime Minister Abe about that.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, on the other hand, said Japan would continue to seek the United States' understanding of the strategic benefits of joining the TPP.
We believe that President Trump is aware of the importance of a free and fair trade. We will continue to calmly seek his understanding for TPP's strategic meaning.
Obama framed TPP without China in an effort to right Asia's trade rules before Beijing could, establishing US economic leadership in the region as part of his pivot to Asia. China has proposed a counter-pact, the Free Trade Area of the Asia-Pacific, and has championed the Southeast Asian-backed Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. The remaining 11 TPP nations are Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, Peru, Singapore, Vietnam, Australia and New Zealand. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television. Well, joining me for a chat this week to talk about what Trump has been doing over the last 1 week is Mr. KP NAYAR, consulting editor of the Telegraph. Mr. NAYAR, thank you so much for joining me on the program. World news this week has been dominated by Donald Trump and his executive orders, but the most controversial of them being that on immigration. And we've seen him set the cat among the pigeons as far as his executive order on immigration is concerned.
You started by saying that Trump has put a stamp on policy during the first week. But it's a stamp with ink that can be erased, you know. Obama, on the other hand, Barack Obama in his first week, he used indelible ink, you know. What he did still survives. I think his first executive order, the first thing he signed was on equal pay for women. I think it was called the Lilly Ledbetter Act, you know. I mean, those are enduring things, whereas what Trump is doing is a bit of an eyewash, you know. I mean, you mentioned the immigration thing. There is already a crescendo of opposition to what Trump has done. Of course, There are 5 points to his executive order on immigration. The first one, whereby refugee entry is stopped for 120 days, it's up to the United States to do that. But the other 4 things that he has done, it goes against the grain of American values. For example, he has restricted entry of people from 7 nations which are predominantly Muslim nations, you know. I mean, that holds up to question the view whether a whole nation can be criticized or accused of thing for what a few people may have done. You cannot make generalizations, you know. I mean, you say that this is a Muslim country, but some of the countries that are covered by this, they did not start with as Muslim nations, you know, they were converts to Islam. So the people are the same, you see.
Sure.
And then a lot of the people who are coming under the various refugee programs and all that, why are they coming? They are coming because of the result of American actions, you see. I mean, Iraq, for example, there were no Iraqi refugees coming to the United States before George W. Bush invaded Iraq. So who created the Iraqi refugee problem in the first place? The United States. And the United States is committed legally and morally to admit Iraqis who helped the invasion. Now what happens to them? You are actually breaking a promise to people who helped your foreign policy, your strategic policy and your defense policy, you know.
Indeed.
So I think that while in the initial euphoria of fulfilling his campaign promises, these things may not be questioned. They will be questioned, and even the Republicans in the House and the Senate will have serious objections to this. The Democratic caucus has already issued a statement saying that this is completely unacceptable.
Indeed.
We have to see what happens on the immigration executive order.
Indeed. You know, and something else also has happened, Mr. Nayar, which is extremely disturbing. You know, after Trump won, we saw Mexicans being chased away by American whites, and then we saw an air hostess clad in a hijab was attacked and said that Trump will take care of you. Are we going to see more of this?
Well, we saw this, quite a bit of this after September 11, the terrorist attacks on World Trade Center and the Pentagon. You know, these tend to be isolated incidents, especially in rural areas, you know, where they don't know, you know, Americans in rural areas, they have no exposure to the world, they are completely ignorant of everything outside their county. Many Sikhs, many Sardars are mistaken for followers of Osama bin Laden because of the turban, you know. So I would think that these are incidents are isolated incidents, and you know how the media is.
Sure.
When the atmosphere is charged, the media plays up this sort of thing.
Indeed.
But incidents I am not very concerned. What I am concerned about is the executive decisions by the president.
Talking about executive decisions, you know, the decision was taken to build the wall as well on the Mexican border. Now, he has not said how this wall is going to be built. He has only said that Mexico is going to pay for it. But he hasn't really given any information as to how this is going to be built or how long it's going to take, you know. But then it's clearly upset the Mexicans for the time being.
Well, the Mexicans are a very proud nation, and they are not going to put up with this nonsense from Trump, you know. I mean, they have a civilization, you know. I mean, the Mayan civilization and the Mexican past. I mean, the United States, as somebody put it once, is still a developing civilization, you know. Mexico is a developing country, but United States is a developing civilization. The Mexicans are not going to put up with this sort of thing. But again, the executive order on the wall is a complete eyewash. You see, 1/3 of the US-Mexican border, there is already a wall, 700 miles, that is 1,120 kilometers. The wall already exists, but nobody talks about it because the Democrats also don't want to talk about the wall, which was built during their time, because it upsets the Hispanic vote and the vote bank. So nobody talks about it. So wherever the wall is possible, the wall already exists. In some areas there are fences, but signing an executive order doesn't mean the wall is going to be built. How are you going to build the wall across the Rio Grande, the river?
Yes.
You cannot build a wall across the river. And there are other parts of the border in the south where there are huge mountains, it is physically impossible to build a wall. John Kelly, who has been confirmed as the Homeland Security Secretary, he's a general who knows what he's talking about. At his confirmation hearing, he was very evasive, because he knows it's not going to be possible.
Sure.
So the executive order is a complete eyewash.
Indeed.
But he is using these gimmicks in order to pretend that he is fulfilling his campaign promises and to convince the constituency, the following that he is fulfilling the promises. The story is going to unfold now from now on, and even about financing it with 20% tax. If Ford imports their car manufactured in their Mexican plant into the United States and pays 20%, Ford is not going to shoulder the cost, right?
It's the consumer
it is going to be passed on to the American consumer. So if at all by any chance the wall is built, the wall will be built, it will be paid for by the American consumer, not by the Mexican government.
Indeed. All right, we'll have to leave it at that, Mr. Nair. Thank you so much for joining us on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Well, on that note, it's time for a short break now, but still to come, new Gambian President Adama Barrow returns home to a joyous scene. Return ends anxious wait after crisis sparked by predecessor Yahya Jammeh's refusal to step down. That and much more on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Well, India and the UAE inked agreements in various fields, including one on allowing the Gulf nation to fill the country's strategic storage facility in South India. Calling the energy partnership an important bridge in the bilateral linkages, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said it contributes to India's energy security. Both nations also decided to elevate the bilateral relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership.
India and UAE signed a slew of agreements signifying the progress in bilateral relations. Highlighting strategic importance of UAE, Prime Minister Narendra Modi called the nation an important partner in India's growth story and a close friend.
Security and defense cooperation have added growing new dimensions to our relationship. We have agreed to expand our useful cooperation in the field of defense to new areas, including in the maritime domain.
The agreements are in diverse fields ranging from defense, maritime transport to cyberspace and social spheres. Chief among these are the comprehensive strategic partnership between India and UAE, MOUs between the defense ministries, cooperation in combating human trafficking, partnerships in the field of small and medium enterprises, agriculture, oil storage and management, among others.
Our convergence can help stabilize the region, and our economic partnership can be a source of regional and global prosperity. We exchange views on developments in West Asia and the Gulf, where both countries have a shared interest in peace and stability.
In his speech, the Prime Minister highlighted the shared cultural history of the two countries. Scores of Indian citizens also live in the UAE. In August 2015, UAE had agreed to increase its investment in India to $75 billion, including through a dedicated infrastructure fund. The two countries also agreed to raise bilateral trade by 60% by 2020. India hosted Abu Dhabi's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan as a special guest for the Republic Day celebrations on Thursday. For the first time, a contingent of UAE soldiers marched in the parade. The 149-member Presidential Guard, which was led by a UAE band consisting of 35 musicians, presented a ceremonial salute to President Pranab Mukherjee. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Moving on now, an aircraft carrying Gambian President Adama Barrow arrived in the capital Banjul on Thursday, days after his predecessor Yahya Jammeh fled into exile in Equatorial Guinea. Barrow smiled as he stepped out of a small plane and walked down a red carpet to be greeted by hundreds of diplomats and officials lined up to welcome him. Immediately afterwards, fighter jets from the West African ECOWAS regional force passed overhead as part of the celebration.
Gambia's President Adama Barrow returned to the country to assume power days after his predecessor Yahya Jammeh left to go into exile. President Barrow's plane touched down at Banjul Airport, where jubilant crowds waited to welcome him. Barrow, who has been in neighbouring Senegal, won elections in December. However, a handover was stalled when Jammeh, Gambia's president of 22 years, refused to step down. He left for exile last weekend after mediation by regional leaders and the threat of military intervention.
I'm here to welcome my president. Yeah, because we are very happy to be here today, welcoming the president of the Third Republic of the Gambia, which is Adama Barrow. So today is our happiest day. We are here to enjoy, and he will be here around 4. So happy to see us as we are preparing for him and welcome him in his country back.
Barrow, who was accompanied by his 2 wives and some of his children, was welcomed by military officials and senior members of his coalition government. He took the oath of office at his country's embassy in Dakar a week ago, and a multinational African force then entered Gambia to ensure his safe return home and Jammeh's departure. Hundreds gathered at the airport awaiting Barrow's arrival, with drummers and dancers firing up the crowds as Nigerian and Senegalese soldiers looked on. Gambians said they were looking forward to their freedom after 2 decades of Jammeh's iron-fisted rule.
Today I'm so glad because we are welcoming our new president, President Adama Barrow, and we are expecting that to create a lot of jobs for the youths, so that the employment rate will go higher and higher, so that we say no more bad way. We sit our country and work here. That's it. That's what we need, and that we are expecting from him also.
The UN envoy for West Africa, Mohammed Ibn Chambas, who briefed the Security Council on Gambia, stressed that the United Nations was working to bolster stability. Barrow will be staying at his own residence until further notice, while the State House, Jammeh's former seat of power, is assessed for potential risks. His first job is to deal with an internal crisis after it emerged that his choice for Vice President may be constitutionally too old for the role. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, let's now shift focus and bring you up to speed with all the sports news you might have missed this week in sports action. Usain Bolt has lost one of his 9 Olympic gold medals after Jamaica teammate Nesta Carter was found guilty of doping at the 2008 Beijing Olympics. Carter was found to have taken the prohibited substance methyl hexanamine. The Jamaica team must now return their medals. Trinidad and Tobago will be promoted to gold, Japan will move up to silver, and 4th place Brazil will be awarded the bronze medal. These standings are subject to any further results from the IOC anti-doping retesting program. Celta Vigo stunned La Liga leaders Real Madrid to reach the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey with a 2-2 draw, 4-3 on aggregate. The hosts went ahead on the stroke of half-time when away defender Danilo turned the ball into his own net. Cristiano Ronaldo got the visitors back into the tie with a brilliant free kick before Daniel Vaz drilled in a low finish for Celta. Lucas Vazquez headed in Real's second, but it was not enough. Zinedine Zidane's side saw their 40-match unbeaten run brought to an end by Sevilla earlier in January. They have now won just once in their past 5 games in all competitions. Brazil beat Colombia 1-0 in a friendly that raised more than £300,000 for the families of the Chapecoense players and staff who were killed in a plane crash in November. 4 survivors, 3 players and a radio commentator were introduced at Rio's Olympic Stadium before the game. Striker Dudu scored the only goal when he headed home after the break. Chapecoense drew 2-2 against Palmeiras on January 21st in their first game since the tragedy. The club has rebuilt its squad with most of its 22 new players arriving on loan from other clubs. Australia cruised to a 57-run victory over Pakistan in the 5th and final one-day international at the Adelaide Oval on Thursday. After setting an imposing total of 369 for 7, thanks to a record opening partnership of 284 between David Warner and Travis Head, the Australians bowled Pakistan out for 312. Pakistan's Babar Azam scored 100 and Sharjeel Khan a quick-fire 79, but the home side were always in control and celebrated Australia Day in style with a convincing win. Australia won the 5-match series 4-1. Formula One's new racing boss Ross Brawn says he wants to develop a purer, simpler sport in which more teams and drivers can win. The ex-Mercedes team boss, who has been appointed managing director of racing by F1's new owner, was critical of some rule changes of recent years. Brawn said he wanted to narrow the gap between the top and the bottom of the field and give F1 a broader appeal. Brawn is a member of a new senior management team appointed following the removal of Bernie Ecclestone from his position as chief executive. And finally, Sydney ushered in the Chinese Lunar New Year with its famous opera house illuminated in red and street performances. Residents and visitors gathered around the city's circular quay to watch traditional Chinese dancing as well as fireworks display over the Sydney Opera House. The celebrations are estimated to attract over 1 million visitors to the harbour city. The Lunar New Year festival will run from January 27 to February 12th, with festivities including night food markets and dragon boat racing. I'm going to leave you with these visuals from Australia. See you again next time.